You already know how important finding purpose in life is. Finding meaning in your life, doing things with meaning, doing things that feel significant to you so that you feel significant in life is really what most of us are looking for. And there's no shortage of information out there, books, videos about finding purpose. I know this is not the first one you've watched about this. It's something we're all seeking. The problem is that I can't even think of a single book or a training I've done or anything like that that I've attended where they really broke it down and explained where it comes from. And in fact, I had kind of given up on it in my life. I thought it was just kind of like a fun thing to feel like you have, and it's something you just kind of have to make up. And that's actually somewhat true, but we're going to actually get into the steps that it takes to create purpose in your life. And the great thing is that when you're doing this, there really is no end to how much purpose and fulfillment you can find in life. As long as you're alive, there is more potential for more purpose, more meaning, more significance, more fulfillment. And that's just a wonderful thing to know. But if you don't know the steps to do it, it can feel like it just kind of comes and goes. And you might even play roles in your life where you feel like you have a lot of purpose, but roles can change. And I'll talk more about that in a bit. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna break this down into really digestible steps that you can follow. And this is not going to be a philosophy, and that's where I think where most people are approaching purpose. It's the philosophy of how good purpose is, and that's what you got to find in life. But how do you do it? How do you actually take the steps to do it? So there is a lot to this. This is a big discussion. This is going to be a part of the big discussion that you can have ongoing. The best thing, though, is the steps that you're going to get to actually start doing this. And what I want you to do is first watch the video. There's an exercise that you can access. You'll find it in the description of this video of how to elicit your values. And that's really where you need to start in order to implement the rest of what I'm going to show you. So the steps that we're going to go through here, don't do the values elicitation exercise just yet. The best thing is to watch this video, do the values elicitation exercise, then come back and watch the video again, because you're going to find, I'm going to show you some traps to watch out for. Now, when you start anything on the right foot, so to speak, when you start a venture, something you want to succeed or something you want to accomplish, you probably already know, though we ignore this advice a lot, that the better off you start, the more prepared you are when you start, the more planning you have, everything else seems to go. That's not by accident, right? The more intention we put into something, the more we understand what we're getting ourselves into, the more prepared we are, it makes everything else fall into place. Not perfectly, nothing's perfect, but I started to realize this a lot with even my YouTube videos, where if I started off with a great title, a great thumbnail, an intro, and I really planned it all out, all the other pieces that come later, the post-production, the views that come, it's always so much better when you front load the very beginning in the best possible way. It just makes everything else align to that. And life's no different. Purpose is no different. So we're going to go into the three main steps that we're going to go into here is going to be the importance of values in finding your purpose. That's why you have the values elicitation exercise in the description of the video. I'm going to talk about how intention and values lead to fulfillment and overall purpose. This is the part that you really want to come back after you do your values elicitation and watch, is the common problematic values where people are getting stuck. And I know this because when I work with one-on-one clients, when I teach my students, these are the values that they think are really good, but they're the ones that they end up getting stuck in. because they sound good. Of course, it's going to sound, these values are going to sound like, well, of course I would want that. Who would not want that? But when you pursue them, they end up getting in your way and causing more problems. So I'm going to show you how to avoid that. All right, so let's switch over to my iPad. Okay, cool. All right, so let's just start with something really basic. There's you. And let's say you have this goal you want to accomplish, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a goal. It's just anything you want. Think about something you want in life. And how do we know what we want? You could say it's a feeling, but most people don't really know deep down what is driving that want. And you want to get really clear about that, because if you don't understand that, you will often go chasing things that will not make you feel more purposeful, more fulfilled. How many times have you achieved a goal and it felt just really empty? And you thought to yourself, wow, I spent all that time, I worked this hard, maybe even spent a bunch of money, and this is it? It's just kind of empty. And it can often make people very hesitant to go after their goals in the future, because you're worried, is this really going to have the payoff that I want? And so when we have a goal, we are basically thinking, if I achieve this, it's going to give me a value. More specifically, it's going to fulfill a value. Everything we do is the attempt, at least, to fulfill a value. Every behavior, every single behavior, even the smallest of your behaviors, nothing starts without an intention. So we have an intention. That's what drives our behavior. That's what drives our actions. That's what drives the direction in which we want our lives to go. We project that onto a goal, anything you want in life, in the attempt to fulfill a value. And I'll just break it down real simple. So you might think that getting a job promotion is going to make you happy. So your intention is to get that job promotion, because when you achieve that, it will fulfill the value of happiness. You believe it will make you happy. Job promotion, insert anything you want in this. It could be a bicycle, it could be a car, it could be a spouse, whatever you think is going to give you that value. And the bigger the goal, not only the greater the value, or the more you will feel the value if you are aligned to it, the more values you will often fulfill. And I'll give you my own example. I love travel, and I didn't understand when I was much younger why I love travel so much. Now I do, because I know how to elicit my values. And the reason I love travel so much, because it checks off a lot of values for me. It makes me happy. I feel challenged when I travel, because I don't go to resorts and stuff like that. I mean, I've been to them, but that's not what I do it for. I love culture, and I'm just using the word love. Love is a value, so it fulfills my loves. And what I do is I elicit values in every context of my life, and I find out what's really important to me, and I want to be very conscious of this, because I want to be very intentional. And if you think about what does intention really mean? Intention and value are pretty much synonymous. You intend something, and in this case, you want to achieve this goal because you think it's going to fulfill a value, so that is your intention. So intention and value are almost the same thing. You might be able to, I like to put intention before, because we think about what we want to do, and then when we go after it, we are projecting value onto this goal. One thing I want to say real quick too, when we take on certain roles in life, we often will get a sense of purpose. So if, say it is that job a job promotion, you go and you get that job promotion, and it puts you in a leadership role, it makes you feel more responsible, and that can give you a sense of purpose. But you can also get fired, or you can get to that role and you realize it's not really what you wanted. And we've got to be careful. We've got to be real careful about allowing ourselves to feel a lot of purpose and value in a role that we play, because roles are temporary. I am the father of 2 teenage kids, and they're getting really close to 18. And as they are getting closer and closer to 18, I feel my parental role, my role as a father, being less and less. The first time I actually really felt a tremendous amount of purpose was when they were born. And that was loaded into the role that I was playing. And it definitely felt good. It definitely felt fulfilling. If you have kids, you know what I'm talking about. And then I started learning what I'm teaching here, and I realized I better sort of pull back on that and not put so much emphasis on that as having purpose in my life, because that role is ending. Of course, I will always be their father, but I will not always be playing that role in the same way. And this happens to a lot of people. As their kids get older and as they leave the home, people often do experience emptiness, maybe even depression, because they put so much purpose, they've emphasized so much purpose on that role that when it starts to go away, they feel like they're losing purpose in their life. So you want to make sure that when you are choosing what you are pursuing, what you're going after that gives you purpose, that you do something really, really important. And that is to recognize that the goal, we could also say the role, since we're talking about that, the role doesn't contain the purpose. The role doesn't contain the value. Where is the value coming from? If we're projecting value onto this, one of the things that we often forget is where it's coming from. Where's the source of the value? That's you. This is very empowering. Very, very empowering. No achievement and no goal or role really gives you anything. It's the value that you project onto these things. And then you seek it out, and it's kind of like a game we play with ourselves. And then we get there, and we either do experience it or we don't experience it. It's kind of like a hypothesis. If I achieve, if I think about what do I want to achieve, and I elicit my values around that, and I know that's what's driving me, that's what's motivating me, and this is all good stuff to do exactly what I'm saying here, because that's what that exercise that I mentioned is about. And you go after this thing, but if you stop acknowledging that the value that you're seeking, if you stop acknowledging that's coming from you, then we are dependent on the accomplishment. We are dependent on the role or whatever it is. And this is why people are so afraid to fail, because they think the object, the material possession I want to acquire, or the achievement itself contains the value. And if I don't get it, then I don't get to be valuable, or I'm not valid, or I think I don't have the self-worth that I thought I was going to have. If I fail at it, then that means my self-worth is lower. Like, none of this is true, because the value is coming from you. Nothing really has inherent value. And I've talked a lot about this, and I still get people pushing back on it, and they say, well, like money, yes, it has inherent value. It has the value written on it, but $100 is not the same, doesn't have the same value to a billionaire as it does to a homeless person. So it's all subjective, and it's all a projection. So we're projecting value on the world around us, and there's nothing wrong with that. We have relationships that we value, that are important to us. So of course, we see it that way. And then if that relationship ends, if we feel that, we can really feel lost and confused for a long time, in addition to the pain of the loss of the relationship. But if we can always come back to, well, the value is coming from me. I'm the one who's projecting it. So if I think this relationship made me happy, and now that relationship is over, if I don't go back and acknowledge that, well, that happiness comes from me. Happiness doesn't just exist in the world and I'm out there trying to grab at it. Happiness is here, and I can acknowledge that at any time. And that's very, very empowering. So when you think about the roles you play in life that give you purpose, it's fine if you value those roles. It's fine if you get purpose from those roles, as long as you always come back to, Well, where is that value originating? Where is the source of that value? It's you. It's you and your intentions. And you can take that and focus it anywhere you want to focus it, on any pursuit or any area of your life. So that puts you back in control. That puts you back in charge. So what we do is we elicit our values around what we want, and I suggest that you do that for every area of your life. Break your life down into 3 to 5 major life contexts, and then elicit your values from each one. You can think of it as what do you want to accomplish in each area of your life, but it doesn't have to be an accomplishment. You can just think about, you can just ask yourself, what is important to me in this area of my life? What is important to me in my marriage? What is important to me in my career? What is important to me as a parent? And go from there and elicit your values. So we should probably also define what a value is, and that is, as my late mentor Steve Andreas defined, it's a generalization about an experience that's important to you. A value is a generalization about an experience that is important to you. Like I said, keep in mind who's doing the generalizing. Who's the one who decides that it's important and how important? That's always you. Don't ever give that up. Don't ever let someone else validate your values for you. That is a recipe for disaster. If we're always seeking validation from others, if we're always seeking validation from our accomplishments, then we are a slave to whether or not those people give us that validation, or that we fail or that we succeed. If failure or a success determines whether or not we're valid and valuable, you're going to suffer on that one, because you're going to do these high highs when you do succeed, and you're going to do these low lows when you fail. And it's completely unnecessary. Always stay connected to that value from within. And your values are your motivation. When you're projecting that into the world around you and say, like, well, it doesn't even have to be, when I say the world around you, I think that might also give a kind of strange impression. It could even just be like, I want 6-pack abs, and I value that. And so I project that onto that. But what if I don't get them? Does that suddenly invalidate me? Well, no. The value is still here. It's just that I want that. And if I know what those values are and why I value that, that's my motivation. That's always your motivation. People often think of motivation as this thing that kind of just floats around in the air, and either it falls on you or not, or it kind of comes and goes. It's always found in your values. What you value is what motivates you. And we project our values. So like I said, we play this kind of game with ourselves. We project our values onto an accomplishment or to this thing that we want to acquire, and then we go in pursuit of it. And when you understand this and you really connect with your values, this is fun. This is not, oh, I have to get it or else I'm an invalid person. And a lot of people are chasing their goals this way, that if I fail, then I am invalid. And as a result, most people will not even take an action toward their goal. They'll convince themselves that they need more time, they need to wait longer, they need to cultivate some sort of skill or knowledge before they go and try. My philosophy is start before you're ready. It won't always work out perfectly, but the thing is to just get out there and start doing it. Start getting out there and pursuing it and enjoy it. Because if you can pursue anything that you want without the fear of being invalidated or losing self-worth or any of those things, then you can just see that it really is just a game. And when you see it that way and it's fun, you're going to perform a lot better. It's going to be much more enjoyable, and you're going to succeed a lot more when you do it that way. All right, so let's say that you know what your values are. Well, I should probably come back and circle back to this. So where do we get purpose in this? I ran out of room. So where do we get purpose? Where does purpose come from? Okay. I grew up in a very religious household where I was taught that the only way that I would ever find purpose is following this religion and following it really well and very strictly. And not to get too much into the story, but I started noticing that the people who preached this the loudest were the people who were hypocrites, basically. They were going against it. So it was really hard for me to really believe in that message. And I tried. I did try, and it just didn't work. And I finally got to a place where I left the religion behind, and I wasn't interested in starting a new one. And I just thought to myself, well, this whole purpose thing, I don't know, it just seems like something you just kind of make up. Maybe it's, you can either go pursue it through a religion, or you can kind of put together your own, not say start your own religion, but start your own philosophy for yourself, which is not a bad idea. And just, you just kind of make up your own purpose. And I didn't really feel it, but I see people, with purpose, and it looks good, but I don't know if they're just fooling themselves or what. So if you think about it, what does an intentional life mean? If you're very intentional with what you do, you're very intentional with the way that you live your life, that sounds a lot like purpose. Like, who doesn't want to live an intentional life? Sounds really good to me. So then what does it mean to live an intentional life? How do you go about doing that? And think of somebody in your life who you don't have to know them well, but somebody who you would say lives a very intentional life. We tend to be inspired by those people. And I can think of a lot of famous people. Gandhi lived a very intentional life. A lot of your humanitarians, they seem to live very intentional lives. So how did they come to be that way? Well, they were very clear about their values. Very clear about their values. They knew what they wanted. And it wasn't just a thing or an object. They could see through that. Sure, they wanted accomplishments, but they could see through to what was the value that they were after. And what kept them going? That's the other thing. When, and I'm talking about the heavyweights of our history, Martin Luther King, like what kept them going whenever so many things were going bad? Because they weren't attached to the accomplishments. They weren't attached to the things. They wanted those things, but they were connected with their values, and whenever they looked at those things and they looked at the direction that they were going in, they saw the value. They aligned with that value. And when you do that in your life, nothing will keep you down. You will be resilient. When you hang it on your values rather than the accomplishments or the things that may or may not happen, the things that are not entirely up to you, because chance does play a role in your accomplishments and your successes or your failures. When you can see past that to the value and stay connected to that value, you will be resilient, because those things can come and go, but you know that you're on a trajectory that isn't defined by a single or even many accomplishments. So when you know your values, but not just any values, when you know your highest values, and you're aligned to those values, then you come upon purpose. Now, how I discovered this was, like I said, I just kind of thought, this whole purpose thing, I don't really know what it's about. It sounds nice, but I don't think that I'm ever really going to have that. Maybe in small ways, like I said, when I became a father, definitely felt that. So I just kind of forgot about purpose. And when my mentor taught me the self-concept model, and he basically said, we have experiences, and when we generalize these experiences into qualities of who we are, and then we generalize all of our qualities together, we get this thing called self-concept, also known as identity. And If I like who I am, if I like this concept I have of myself, then I get self-esteem. So we work at the level of qualities, which are like beliefs. They're generalizations I make about myself. They're generalizations you make about yourself. The aspects of who you are. So that's what qualities are. The qualities are the generalizations about aspects of who you are. Now, if I value that quality, if I am what I value, that's going to make me feel good about myself. So if I value kindness and I believe I'm a kind person, my self-esteem is going to go up and it's going to stay there and it's going to be stable. It's not going to bounce around up and down as the clouds change or the weather changes, or people tell me, oh, you're not such a kind person, or I don't like you, or whatever. That's not going to. I mean, I'll accept that information. I'll take a look at it. Do they have something here? Maybe I'll make some adjustments based on their feedback. But I believe I am this value, and I'm basing it on actual experiences that I've had. So you're not going to change the way that I believe about myself. Nothing out there is going to change that. Again, I'll accept the feedback because I'm not a narcissist. I'll accept the feedback and I'll make adjustments if I find the feedback useful. But not all the time do people give us useful feedback. Sometimes people are just being mean. Sometimes people are just telling us things because they're caught in their head. They're seeing it the way that they're seeing it, and it's not very accurate. So I'm going to assess the accuracy of the feedback, and if it's useful, I'm going to use it. I'm not afraid of it. And if it's not useful, I'm just going to throw it out. So the important part about the qualities is whether or not you value them. Because when I say qualities, quality has a positive connotation to it. But this is neutral. It can be positive and negative. You can have qualities about yourself that you don't like. So what happens when you have more qualities about yourself that you don't like? Well, your self-esteem is going to go down. So if I identify my values, say happiness, joy, peace, passion, these are high values of mine, and then I ask myself, am I each one of those as qualities of who I am? If I am, my self-esteem goes up, I feel good about myself, and I naturally behave in alignment with that because that's what I believe about myself. Your behavior, your actions align with what your beliefs are about who you are. And if you have negative values about yourself, or negative qualities about yourself, you believe negative things about who you are, your actions are still going to align with those. If you believe you are a failure, you will find a way to fail. Why? Because the cognitive dissonance is more painful. The feeling lost and I don't know who I am, I'm acting in a different way than I believe myself to be, that split scares us a lot, even more so than acting out negative qualities about who you are, even if you don't want to believe that about yourself. So I'm learning all this, and my mentor is mentoring me on this self-concept model. And I keep hearing him say over and over and over again, the more you value a quality, the higher you value it, the greater your self-esteem the self-esteem you will experience when you align to that value. So I thought to myself, okay, well, why don't I do a values elicitation and find out what are my highest values? So this is where that values elicitation comes in real handy. So I started doing this. I broke my life down into three to five major life contexts, just like I suggested you do. And then I started eliciting my values from each of these contexts. So things like freedom, and by the way, freedom is a value, but it's not a quality. So I cross-reference that to authenticity. Running out of room on the side there. Joy, passion. I like success a lot. And these are just a few. So I elicited all these values, collected all these values, and then I went one by one asking myself, am I, and then inserted the value as a quality, turning the value on myself and asking myself, am I this? Am I this? Am I joyful? Am I passionate? Am I successful? Am I accomplished? Am I happy? And all of these really high values turned out, I felt very ambiguous about all of them. And now finally, I knew where the suffering was, or why I was having the suffering that I was having. Now I knew why my potential, I was limiting my own potential because I didn't believe I was what I value. Now, the way that most people go about this is they think, oh, so I gotta convince myself with affirmations, or I gotta go have a bunch of successes, or I gotta go have a bunch of joyful experiences, and if I do this enough, then I'll go ahead and I'll turn into that person. That might happen, but it's likely not to, because your mind is set to select and collect in such a way that it affirms your beliefs. I'm gonna say that again. Your mind is programmed to select and collect information around you to align with your beliefs. It goes back to what I was saying about that cognitive dissonance. We are so afraid of that cognitive dissonance, that scariness of not knowing who we are, that even if we have limiting negative beliefs about ourselves, we will still align to them so that we don't have to experience that. Because if you think about it, if you've ever had that experience of feeling truly lost, like you didn't know who you were, it's one of the scariest things you will ever experience. I've experienced it more than once. So we will align to the negativity simply because we don't want to get into a place where we feel lost about who we are. So I gathered up all of my highest values, and one by one, I went and transformed them into certain and solid qualities of who I am. That's what the self-concept model is about. It's about learning the structure, how we structure beliefs. And then once we know our own personal map, because everyone has their own personal map of how you structure beliefs about yourself and how those beliefs feel certain, because you can think things about yourself, but they don't feel certain. You can find that map of that structure of how things feel certain about who you are. And once you have that map, once you have that structure, now all you have to do is just input the information that you've already lived. We're not making stuff up. We're not doing affirmations, none of that stuff, or law of assumption or law of attraction. We're not making it up. You pull actual experiences from your life and you restructure them so that they are aligned with your values and they feel certain and solid. And when that happens, when I did this with all of my highest values, it was like an explosion. And my life suddenly changed rapidly. And not only did I feel that self-esteem up here that my mentor said I would feel, not only did I feel that, for the first time in my life, I felt purpose. And boy, did it surprise me, because I was not expecting that. Like I said, I had pretty much given up on this. And not only that, it was different than the purpose I felt when I had become a father. The purpose I felt when I had become a father felt dependent on being a father, naturally. It felt dependent on the fact that I had kids. So, God forbid something happened to them. Actually, I'm an atheist, so I don't know why I said that. So, but say something did happen to them. So, it would have been devastating. And I lose that role, I would also lose that purpose. So the purpose I felt came from within. Like I said, it's when you go back and acknowledge that this value over here that you're projecting at all these things around the world, in the world, even accomplishments that you haven't accomplished yet, goals that you haven't accomplished yet, when you go back and you really acknowledge where the source of that is coming from, and you never let go of that, no one can take your purpose from you. And not even life itself can take that purpose from you, or whatever events in life happen. Because it's always coming from within. It's always coming from your beliefs. It's always coming from your generalizations about the experiences in your life that are important to you, that only you can determine is important for you. So that's how I found purpose. Was not expecting it at all. Like I said, it blew my mind. And I went to Steve and told him what I had done, because he didn't really teach values elicitation. He just kind of assumed that, you know, people knew what their values were. And I said, hey, Steve, this is what I did, and I can't tell you, I can't even explain what I'm feeling right now, but I did tell him, I said, for the first time in my life, I truly feel intentional. I feel purposeful. I feel like my life has meaning, and it's not being given to me by anything else or anyone else, not a philosophy, not a dogma, nothing like that. It is coming from within. And it was like just pure fuel that I started running on, and it has not stopped. I'm still functioning from that. And not only that, it's going deeper and deeper. Once you start in this direction, it just goes deeper and deeper. I continue to feel more and more purpose. I continue to feel more and more fulfillment. And part of that is also continuing to pursue my potential. Well, what else is there? And this brings us to this really important part about what values you pursue, what values you work with. And I divided them up into different levels. So we have what I call low level values. And then we have medium level. Running out of room here. So let's do this. And then we have high level. Now, why did I call them low level, medium level, and high level values? Because I'm not that creative. No, it's, I don't know, the words just kind of came out as I was teaching it, and maybe there's better words for this, but that's just what I'm going to call it for now. So what are low level values? Well, they're not, it's not that the values are not important. It's not that they're not good for you to pursue. It's just that they have really low fulfillment. So you don't want to get stuck here. And these are values like safety, which is essential, but there's not much fulfillment in it. Once you are safe, how do you go deeper with that? Do you get a bulletproof vest, hire a bodyguard? You know, there's just not, you can't take that much further. It's time to move on to higher values once you have the safety that you need. So pleasure, ooh, how did that, okay, there we go. So we have pleasure. Again, nothing wrong with pleasure. It's good to experience pleasure. It's just not sustainable. Like, you can only experience so much pleasure at a time, and then, you know, it lacks fulfillment after a while. And the same thing with comfort. And that's another one that people think that they're going to find greater fulfillment out of comfort, and it's just not. You can only get so much out of that. So what are medium level values? Well, what I like to say about them is that they're very grounded. They're clear. They're easy to know what you're pointing at when you talk about medium level values. They're attainable, which is great. And they're fulfilling, the most important part. Okay. And these are things that I've already mentioned, like passion. We have success. Competence is a good one. And what else? Yeah, we could throw in adventure. Adventure is kind of on the line. I feel like when I travel, adventure is I would say it's a medium level value for me. For some people, it might not be so much. And again, this is all, I mean, really, this is all rather subjective. So if you don't quite agree with 100% of everything that I'm saying here, it's fine. I'm not the final word on these levels of values. Now, what are high level values? Well, there's many possibilities. I don't have much room here. The higher you go, the more possibilities there are, because they're such big generalizations. They're also very fulfilling, really fulfilling, and there's a lot to explore. And so what am I talking about here? I'm talking about values like love, happiness, and we have joy and peace. Now, we have what we call small chunk people and big chunk people, and a better word to probably use that is like big picture people, medium level picture, and a small picture people. And those are just, there's no right or wrong here either. There are some people who have like these big visions, these big ideas, they're usually going after really lofty goals. And there are some people who go, you know, I really can't connect with that. I need something a little more bite-size to focus on, because it might just seem too lofty, too unattainable if you go too high. So everybody's a little bit different, and like I said, there's no right or wrong here. But love, happiness, joy, peace, these are really high level. There's so much to be explored here. There's so many different ways you can love. There's so many things that can make you happy. There's so many ways to be joyful, and peace is so deep. There's so many, I mean, you can just keep going deeper and deeper with that peace from within. So that's what I would call high-level values. Now, people get caught up in this a lot, which are what I call ultra-high-level values. And if you're watching this for the second time, after you've done your values elicitation, you are probably recognizing some of these. Actually, I don't like the way I did this. Let's start over. Okay, so ultra. And by the way, I'm not at all saying that any of these values that I'm putting out there so far are values you should not pursue. We should, if you value them, only if you value them. So the problem with ultra high level values is they're too nebulous. They're vague. They have an overemphasis on the end result. They lack a pathway. To attain. They're not bad. It's just that we can't do much with them. So those words are words like, or values like fulfillment, confidence, self-esteem, just meaning, purpose, the very thing that we're talking about, right? And contentment. And by the way, this is why when you hear people talk about the importance of purpose, they never really tell you how to do it, because it's really the end result, and you cannot go at these directly. And I've had people say this when I coach people. That's always the first question I ask them is, "What do you want?" And they'll say, "Well, I want fulfillment." And it's like, okay, we need to backtrack a little bit. We need to find what are the values that are going to fulfill you when you fulfill them. And people will say, "Well, I want confidence." And then I say, okay, well, we got to find out what are those values, what are those beliefs that you value, that when we transform them is going to make you feel confident. You cannot go at confidence directly, but many people will try, and many self-help gurus will tell you, try to tell you how that they can give you confidence, or that if you do what they say, that you'll become more confident, and it just doesn't work that way. You have to know what are the values that you value. These are going to be more found in the medium level values and the high level values, that when you're fulfilling your medium and high level values, you're going to experience fulfillment, you're going to experience confidence, self-esteem, meaning, purpose, contentment. And this is why purpose was so elusive for me, because I could not find a pathway to it. And no matter how many books I read, no matter how many YouTube videos I watched, it was too vague. It was, like I said, too nebulous. So what Steve would always say is that most people are trying to go directly at self-esteem, and they're failing at it. And he even said that before his, well before his passing, he would go onto Amazon and look at all these self-help books on self-esteem, and he had read plenty of them. He had even been to conferences where they focused on self-esteem and how the importance of it, but no one could tell anyone how to do it. And he would tell them, it's like, okay, tell me, how do I raise my self-esteem? What do I do? And people would just kind of go blank because there isn't a direct pathway to it. I mean, what I'm giving you here is the most direct pathway, which is to elicit your values, discover what your values are, and when you align to them, the more you align to them, the more you are going to experience that self-esteem, that confidence, that purpose, that meaning, the contentment. But it's really hard to be so conscious of that, to always be trying to do it. So the key here is to transform them into beliefs about yourself so that you don't have to, consciously be thinking, okay, am I aligned with, this value, this value, this value? It just gets to be too much. But if you transform them into beliefs, you're on autopilot now. So if you think about all the beliefs you're carrying around with you right now, especially your unconscious ones, the ones you're not even conscious of, you don't even know they exist, but they're guiding your life. They are determining where you go, your behaviors, what you think about your life. You're not practicing those. They're just selecting and collecting information as you go through life automatically. You can learn how these beliefs are structured so that you can transform your values into beliefs about who you are, so that you naturally select and collect that information. And you don't have to practice it. You don't have to be so conscious of it. It just naturally happens. And that's when you get fulfillment, confidence, self-esteem, meaning, purpose, and contentment without, I don't want to say there's no effort in it, because any type of behavior is technically effort, but you're not having to be so hyper-conscious of it to make sure that you're doing it all right. Because then you're going to, of course, get frustrated and it's going to get tiring. Now, it's amazing to me how much people get caught in these low-level values. When I'm working with a one-on-one client or I'm teaching students, we'll do a values elicitation, and we'll also do the hierarchy of those values. So I want to know how the person who I'm working with, where do they rank these values in levels of fulfillment? And what I will often see is somebody will take something like, I didn't put it here, but I'll add it here now. Freedom is an extremely high value. So much so that it's not a quality. You can value freedom, but freedom as a quality of being, as an aspect of who you are, it's like, it doesn't really compute. It's an extremely high level value. So what I'll see people do in their hierarchy of their values, once they sort out which ones are the most important to them, and most important by not which one has to come first, most important by the greatest level of fulfillment. And I'll see people put safety at the top, and they'll have value, 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 and at the bottom, they'll have freedom. And I'm like, okay, how did that happen? Now, for some people, all that needs to be adjusted there is they think the hierarchy is not a hierarchy, but like a linear thing, like step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. So people might say, well, first I need to feel safe. Then, let's see, we'll pull them off of here. Then I need to feel competent. And then when I'm competent, then I need to experience success. And when I'm successful, I experience freedom. Now, sometimes this is how they get it wrong in the sense of the hierarchy that I'm asking them for. That might all be true, but that's not what I'm asking for with a hierarchy. Whoop. Let's see, okay, I got my eraser. So we're not looking for the steps. We're not looking for the linear process that people believe they have to go through to get to their highest values. That's not what a hierarchy is. A hierarchy, Oh, I didn't put the Y. A hierarchy is which values have the most fulfillment for me. Freedom is often way up there for a lot of people. So it would be something like freedom, and then happiness, and then it would be success, and something like competence. Now, keep in mind here, I'm not in any way saying that this is the hierarchy that you should have. This is just for illustration purposes. I'm just giving you an example. And then down at the bottom might be safety or security. Now this makes a lot more sense. So I'm going to get the most fulfillment out of feeling free. And contained in that freedom is going to be happiness. Contained in that happiness and freedom is going to be success. Contained in that freedom, happiness, and success is competence. And then contained in all of that is safety. So it's like freedom is the big category that contains all of these below it. That's what we're looking for in a hierarchy. And why is that important? Because you want to know what you're aiming at. And especially when it comes to making decisions, you want to make sure that you're making your decisions based on which choice will give me the most of my highest values. Not every choice you're going to be able to include them all, so you want to go with the highest ones. Which choice gives me the most of my highest values? I don't want to make choices based on safety if I don't get freedom and happiness out of it. And that's the catch. A lot of people are doing that. A lot of people are stuck here in safety, thinking that when I feel safe enough, then I'll be able to do the things where I'll acquire the competence and the success, the happiness, and the freedom. And that's just backwards, because most of you are safe. If you're not in a country that is at war, or if you're in a country where it's so dangerous that you feel like you're in survival mode all the time, because you are, like your life is literally at stake, or your money, your income's always being threatened or something like that, then yeah, you need to get to safety first, because you have to have some safety to eventually access these higher values. But most people think that this is their highest value, and so they never get out of it. They never acknowledge that they are safe. They have a roof over their head. Nobody's threatening their life. Nobody's threatening their income. But they keep focusing on what they fear. And as long as you keep focusing on what you fear, you're always going to be focused on safety and security. And it will never be enough, because you're not even acknowledging that you're already safe. If you want to acknowledge that you're safe and you're always focused on your fears, you will get stuck there, and you will never get to these higher values. So it's time to change your focus, because it's time to understand that hierarchy, and it's time to acknowledge that there's no such thing as 100% guarantee anything, but as long as you are going back to connecting with your own values and validating your own values for yourself, it doesn't matter how many times you fail. It doesn't matter how many times you get rejected. None of these things matter. Yes, it will sting. It always does. And it will be frustrating. But you know where the source of your value comes from, and that is you. So no one can take that away from you. No one can take your purpose away from you. That's yours, because you understand that now. All right. Let's check the comments. Someone says, I feel like if I validated myself for something inside me, I will turn into a narcissist. No, you won't. And the reason why is because a narcissist cannot validate themselves. A narcissist has a very weak sense of self, and they're constantly looking for external validation. So this is the opposite of being a narcissist. All right, people saying lots of nice things, so thank you. Can you give more concrete examples? I think I gave a lot of concrete examples. If you need more, ask me what you would like some examples of, I'm happy to give them. I mean, my life is full of them. Oh, you're welcome, Leslie. Leslie says, thank you, Damon. I'm an atheist too, and yet you've just had an epiphany over this. I've just had an epiphany over this. Good. Thank you, Byron. Byron says, this is so nicely structured, and yet I don't know anyone else explaining it this way. Me neither. This is a lot of trial and error. And also, I mean, I had a mentor, but he didn't explain all of this. Some of it is certainly inspired by him, and I wouldn't have understood any of this stuff without Steve Andreas. But a lot of this is my own trial and error. So what if this is not physical safety, but financial security and freedom? Good question. So the whole thing about me going on and on about safety and financial security. So for one thing, it's compartmentalizing it to this context of your life, Emmy. So what's important about that is understanding that, okay, if you're not worried about your physical safety, great, you can acknowledge you are physically safe. And so this is just one area of your life. You're talking about, I guess, your finances. It could be career as well. And then you can ask yourself, am I really in danger here? Am I really in danger of losing my income? Am I really in danger of not being able to draw an income? Maybe, yeah, maybe I can get fired from this job, but I can go get another one, right? So it's really assessing where you are with this and acknowledging how safe you are and how secure you are, because you do have a certain amount of security. And that doesn't mean you go run out and do something very risky or speculative. I'm not suggesting that at all, but acknowledge how safe you are. You have the ability to make an income. You have the ability, even if you get fired, to go find another job. So acknowledge that. And in fact, when's the best time to go look for a job? When you already have one. Why? Because you're not so focused on, you're not so desperate, right? And that's when you truly are not safe. And that is when it's the hardest, because you're very unresourceful at that point. You're very desperate. So assess the risk effectively and accurately, and then make the next move, which is probably going to be something of a risk, but it's not the great risk that you might feel or think it is. All right. I came late to join. How can I cover? Don't worry, this is going to stay up. Where would you place intimacy? I mean, I would say that that's probably a mid to high level value. Depends on how much you value it. Depends on what the relationship is. If it's your marriage, it's probably very high. If it's friendship, it's maybe more midline. It kind of depends on you at that one. I would put that one mid to high for myself. But it's not so important to categorize each one. Like, I don't want you to get caught up in this, right? I just want you to understand the difference between like low-level values, why you don't want to get stuck in low-level values, and why trying to pursue ultra high-level values is not going to get you anywhere, okay? So where I want you is to stay in this area right here, okay? I know this is getting a complete mess. That's where I want you to stay and really focus. Someone says, I'm from Germany. People here have a culture of telling stuff to your face and criticize you permanently. Okay, do you have tips how to not lose your mind when you get negative feedback? Well, if you really are surrounded with people like that, that's really unpleasant. Like, I would just find better people to hang around is what I would tell you first and foremost. And the other thing too is when you are really connected to your own values and you really believe you are your values, this stuff doesn't really affect you that much. But I mean, if you hear enough of it, you're constantly surrounded by it. It just sounds like a really unpleasant place to be. So I would surround myself with better friends is what I would do as well. So I feel as if I've achieved my highest value, which is freedom. Now I'm stuck. Well, if you're stuck, you're not free. So you have to admit I have very low self-esteem though. Okay, well, now you know what to do. Where does self-esteem come from? It comes from being what you value. That's the solution. And it's simple, not necessarily always easy, but you can do something about this. Off of ME is financial freedom, high level. Anything involving freedom is very high. But so here's the other thing about financial freedom. Be careful with that one. I don't like to qualify my freedom by putting financial in front of it. I like freedom. I want freedom overall. So if I hyper-focused on financial freedom, that might make me less free in other ways. And I did this before. When I went for my insurance business, I was focused on financial freedom. And I kind of wanted this other freedom too. But I went in the wrong direction because I didn't like insurance. It was, and then when you start your own business, you're working a lot. And I was working like 60 to 80 hours a week doing something that I didn't enjoy, so I was anything but free. I didn't understand freedom as well as I needed to. So I don't like to qualify my freedom. Other people might be a little bit different. There might be, I'm not saying it's wrong, but I would focus on your overall freedom, not just financial. I mean, you can think about it in terms of in your finances, or you can think about it in terms of your career, but think about how free does this make me? Not how financially free does this make me? Because you can do a lot of things that will make you financially free, but then we call it the golden handcuffs, right? I'm really glad that I did not succeed well at my insurance business because it would have been very hard to leave it. So whereas I might have been financially free, I would have still been stuck in an insurance business that I hated. And nothing against the insurance business, by the way, if we have any insurance agents watching. So I have one of my best friends is an insurance agent still. It's a noble profession. Just want to qualify that. Any suggested reading on NLP sales? Watch my live streams with Jason Fladlian if you want to do NLP and sales, and we're gonna do more of those, and more of that is coming because people are asking for more of it. If you feel free in the United States, you have a lot of money, and I can prove it. There's a lot of truth to that. Okay. Okay. I think there was something else I wanted to say. Oh, the concrete examples. Nicole, do you have any questions about the concrete examples you want, or did you get those already? Because I would like to answer that. I have plenty of concrete examples. I love concrete examples. That's the way that I function well myself. I like, give me examples so I can understand what you're talking about. So I don't know specifically, Nicole, what concrete examples you were asking for. And I don't see anything coming up here in the chat box. So if you do think of one later, or a specific concrete example that you would like, feel free to comment later. This video will stay up, and I'll be happy to answer that. Okay, cool. All right, well, this was a lot of fun for me. I hope you got a tremendous amount out of this. I love doing this. Make sure you're subscribed so that you know when we're doing this. We're going to be doing this pretty often, these live streams, because people are responding to them so well. So make sure you subscribe. It doesn't hurt if you like this video. Any suggestions if you have low self-esteem, but because you are not in line with your values? That is not the case, my friend. When you align with your values, you will feel it immediately. Think of a value that you value, and think of times when you acted in alignment with that value, and you will feel it immediately. That's just how it happens. There's no such thing as self-esteem without aligning with your values. That's how it works. That is what self-esteem is. When you are behaving and being and doing what you value. That's when you like yourself. That's what gives you self-esteem. So how do you elicit the values for yourself? Like I mentioned before, in the description of this video, there is a link. You click on that link, and you get access to that values elicitation exercise. Do that, elicit your values, come back and watch this video. All right? Take care, everyone. I will see you on the next live stream.